5, 4, 3.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Glassdoor's How to Get a Job Live. My name is Amy Elisa Jackson, and I'm the editorial director at Glassdoor and your host for today's event. We're live from the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco, California. Over the next hour, we'll bring you everything you need to know about how to search for and apply to the right job. We'll give you tried and tested tips on how to get noticed by employers. Plus, we'll hear from recruiters at Facebook, Salesforce, and Kaiser Permanente on how you can stand out from the competition. Then, have you ever applied to a job and never heard back? Today, we'll get to the bottom of what really happens to your resume after you click that apply button. Along the way, you'll also learn how one of the world's largest job sites, Glassdoor, helps you find a job that fits your life. To get us started, first we'll find out sort of where the jobs are, what roles are in demand, and how to apply to the jobs the right way. Joining me are Glassdoor's chief economist, Dr. Andrew Chamberlain, and job search expert, Scott Dabrowski. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
We're so glad to be here.
Good to be here.
Let's kind of set the scene. What's really happening in the job market right now? It seems like the competition is pretty stiff. Andrew, can you give us some insight?
Yes, so the job market today, I would say, is the strongest it's been in a generation, really. So you've got a very low unemployment rate, close to 4% in some cities, and it's a very good time to be looking for a job. Many job seekers are really in the driver's seat and have a lot of bargaining power today. However, just because there's a lot of jobs doesn't mean it's easy to get a job, because employers today are inundated with resumes. It's getting harder than ever to sort yourself out from the competition. And also, if you've been out of the job market for a few years, the landscape for skills has really changed. And so you might not really know how to fit yourself in anymore. So my best advice for people today, even though it's a strong job market, you got to find ways to differentiate yourself from the competition and do the homework beforehand to make sure that you're a good fit for a job before you put your name in the hat with employers.
Now, Scott, sort of give us some insight as to how to distinguish yourself and how to stand out from the competition if it's such a hot job market.
Yeah, well, first you've got to find the job. So there's so many different ways you can, find this job. But what we really recommend is identifying what's important to you first. And with, a site like Glassdoor, anything you use, you can search by filtering. So filter by the type of company, the number of employees, where it's located, the industry it's in. And you can apply the job title that you're looking for. But the good thing with today's technology is not only will you find specific job titles you're looking for in the search algorithms, you will also find related job titles. This is actually one of my favorite parts.
Really?
Because you may discover a job in today's evolving job landscape that you don't even know exists, because you might find a skill set from job A and job B, but lo and behold, it's called this. So in addition to looking at search results on page 1 or page 2, go beyond that to look for related jobs, job titles you didn't know existed, and then save them along the way as you go is a good recommendation. Apply to them later, not too far later, because you don't want to miss out, but that's how you want to get started. It's all about skills and finding first the jobs that are right for you. So you're finding this is really important, right for you. Customizing the job search, not spraying and praying.
Okay. Now, Andrew, what are some of the hottest jobs right now? Everyone's raving about tech, but are those the only hot jobs?
Well, what is a best job differs people to people. Not everybody wants the same thing. But in general, I would say everybody wants 3 things. You want high pay, you want lots of job openings, and you want lots of people who are in those jobs who say that they're satisfied. So every year Glassdoor publishes a best jobs in America list, and so that's a good place to start, is use the data to see if you're not quite sure what your next step might be. You can use that list for some ideas of what are great jobs. I would highlight jobs in really 2 sectors that are awesome to look at today. So one is in technology. Now, when people think of tech jobs, mostly they think of software engineers. But you can work in tech without being a programmer today.
Okay.
There's more jobs like strategy experts, marketing managers, product managers. Many of these jobs don't require you to code, but they still get all the amenities of working in a fast-moving, growing tech industry. You can work in great cities and have an upward career arc. So that's one place to think about. The second one is healthcare. So healthcare is a huge and booming industry. And I think it's not on many people's radar because many people think you have to do medical school or go through a long training program. That's just not the case. So there's many jobs like occupational occupational therapist, for example, and nursing manager. These are roles that all showed up on Glassdoor's Best Jobs for 2018 that may not be on people's radars.
Wow. What are some of the skills that recruiters and hiring managers are really looking for right now? Because some of these, like you said, sort of coding, those are really specific skills, but are there universal skills that recruiters are really searching for?
One skill every recruiter wants is ability to work with data in some way. It doesn't mean you have to be a data scientist or do any crazy machine learning. It just means if you're in sales or in marketing or in any sort of management role, just having the ability to work with data, make decisions using it, know what's good and bad use of data. That's a very general skill that anyone can get up to speed in less than a year. But I think more importantly than data skills, people today are looking for flexible employees who have a willingness to learn as the job market and the skills market changes, willingness to grow. So not just stay put where they are, but get out of their comfort zone and keep learning and have some grit to get through it. So I think job seekers really need to demonstrate that they have grit, that they want to learn, and that they're okay to get out of their comfort zone and keep changing and as they ride the wave of their career as jobs keep changing.
Awesome. Now, Scott, now I got to ask you, how should job seekers display some of these great skills on their resume? Because it's hard to say, like, hey, I'm flexible, that may not be a bullet point, but what are some of the ways to display skills in a competitive way on a resume?
Right, so here's what we recommend, and we've seen a lot of different formats, and this is some general advice for most people. At the very top, first of all, a professional summary statement is a great way to go. Believe it or not, most recruiters or hiring managers spend about 6 or 7 seconds on a resume. Now, you shouldn't be offended by that. In a lot of jobs, there can be dozens or even hundreds. So you should expect that, hear it, and address it. So put 2 to 3 sentences at the top of your resume. And remember, it's not, I want X position or I want X opportunity. If you're applying to it, they kind of know that. So instead, you want to put why you stand out, what makes you different, what you've done a little bit that makes you different from another marketing manager, from another software engineer, from another sales associate. What have you done that stands out? Then you could go a couple different ways. You can highlight your skill sets right below it, or you can do a timeline resume, which is still very popular. We recommend no more than 10 years of work experience that you're highlighting with bullets. In those bullets, here's what you're really asking about, is the data quantifying your success. That's what today's recruiters are looking for in almost every industry. So if you sell sweatshirts, how many did you sell? How many days? And how much did it go up during the busy time, during the holidays perhaps? If you write something online, well, how many clicks did you get to that? And where are these clicks coming from? What is that about? Hey, what if you're driving even, Uber or one of these ride sharing? How many rides are you doing? Who are you picking up? And kind of what's your rate? And so using some of these numbers and comparisons, no matter what job you have, whether entry level or 20 years on the job, this is how you scream out, I can do this, I've been successful.
Okay, now this is something that I've always wanted to know. The cover letter. Is the cover letter dead? Is it essential? Because every application usually will say optional. And it can feel like a trap, but you can feel like, oh, let me sort of do the blanket, hey, this is why you should give me the job, sincerely, Amy, Elisa. But tell me about XOXO.
Right.
But tell me a little bit about the cover letter. Is it dead? Is it essential?
Yeah, well, a couple options, right? So if they say cover letter required, guess what? You're doing a cover letter. Okay, if it says optional, we recommend it. If it doesn't say anything, you may want to do it. Here's why. Yeah. If you have a lot of resumes that come into a recruiter or hiring manager, and let's say you are one of 5 people who look amazing, that's great, congratulations. But if you want that added edge, if you want to stand out, a cover letter can be your added opportunity to paint color around what they see, often very quickly, on your resume. So they can look at document A for kind of the nuts and bolts, and then look at document B for the why and the how you did those amazing stats, or you're calling out those skills and those achievements. The cover letter with a quick introduction, 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, and a closing paragraph typically, a little added color on the why and the how you did it, how you accomplished those great things that you're touting.
Awesome.
I think there are two reasons why cover letters are not dead.
Okay,
right?
give it to us.
One is many jobs today require better writing skills than ever because more communication is happening through emails, and just using the cover letter to highlight that you've got those skills can be very valuable. Second is every candidate really needs to tell a story to a recruiter about how this role is the next logical step in their progression. If you don't use your cover letter to tell the story about why you're the right person for that role, you're shifting that burden onto them. They're going to have to look at your background and resume and make the story up for you. So why not make it easier? Tell them the story and let them see why you're the fit for the role.
Agree.
Wonderful. One of the biggest things that's in the news and everyone's kind of wondering is, will robots take my job, right? AI, machine learning, it's everywhere. We see it in our apps. We're seeing it everywhere. Andrew, what can you tell us about sort of the impact that robots and technology have on jobs and the job market right now?
So in general, what happens with artificial intelligence and robotics is people don't get replaced. Instead, they team up with it.
Okay.
So what automation often does is it takes the most routine aspects of a job, does those for you, and then what it leaves behind are the hardest parts of the job, the parts that are most human and actually most valuable. And so if you look at history and you look at things like ATMs, bank teller jobs didn't disappear. Instead, what it did is it took the worst aspect of that job, did it easily, and then it let bank tellers work on more sophisticated things like being a personal banker and doing sales of more sophisticated products. So my advice for people for automation is to find ways to learn how automation is being used in your industry and find ways to team up with it so that you're not at risk of being replaced. Instead, you can use automation to have superpowers and be more productive and then more valuable.
Okay, so good. So a robot will not take my job. I will still be here. I'm safe?
You are
Okay.
safe.
Just making sure, I've got bills to pay.
Right. I hear you. Yeah.
Let's transition sort of to a pain point that all of us have faced in applying for a job. Sort of, you don't really know how long it's supposed to take. You click that submit button and you're sort of like praying. You're just kind of hoping and wishing that someone's going to get back to you and that it's not like in the vortex. Andrew, talk to me a little bit about how long it takes to get hired and what the job seekers who are tuning in today can expect in terms of how long it can take for a recruiter to get back to them.
U.S. average, it's about 23 or 24 days to go through the in-job interview process, but that varies really widely. So if you're applying to say a federal government job in D.C., it'll probably be 60 or 70 days or more.
Wow.
Because there's often many hoops you have to jump through. But if you're a retail cashier in San Diego, say, it might be 7 days or 10 days. So generally, those delays have gotten longer in recent years. So it is taking longer to get through job interview processes today, and it's because employers are using more screens. Jobs are getting more technical, and employers are being more careful, making sure that people can actually do the things they say they can do. So
it's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily a bad thing. So that really is the key takeaway. A long job interview process by itself may not be bad because it might mean that you and the employer are doing a very careful dating process to make sure that you guys are going to fit and work long term. What is a red flag is if a hiring process is carrying on and you have repetitive steps.
Okay.
And that can often be a sign that maybe you're not the top candidate or that there's disagreement internally about what this job is supposed to be doing. So my recommendation for people is keep pinging and expect updates week after week. Don't let 7 days go by without pinging a recruiter to find out where you stand.
Are there ways to sort of follow up with a recruiter that don't feel a little too stalkerish? Because you don't want to go too far left,
Yeah, so it is a courting process. That's a really good analogy, and you hope that in the end they swipe right on you, so to speak. Okay. So kind of what we suggest here is you formally apply from the beginning on the job application. And in fact, if you apply on Glassdoor, it often signals to employers that you may be a quality candidate. They like those candidates because it shows you're doing your research. So let's say you apply formally. What's the next step? You're kind of hoping you hear back. You're right. You kind of just want to be heard and acknowledged. You know, it's not a bad feeling, but it can, give you a little, antsiness. So anyways, we recommend within 24 to 48 hours after hitting that apply button, it is generally okay to try and tap someone on the team that, hey, I'm really interested in the job. This takes some tact, though. This is, again, not spraying and praying at everyone on the team. It is not tweeting at them. Here's what you might do. You can look on professional networks and find out who is on the team, perhaps who's the hiring manager directly, or the director of that team, if you really can find that out. And guess what? Most email addresses at companies are often first name dot last name at company.com or first initial last name at company.com. So you could try some of these emailing it to an individual. The worst thing you do is you get a bounce back. And if you don't get a bounce back for the other one, well, guess what? It probably went through. So that could be success. So it's okay to email them and let them know kindly, hello, my name is Scott. I applied for your formally of your job, whatever it is. I want to let you know I'm extremely interested. If you can help get my resume noticed, I certainly appreciate it. That's all super short and clear. And guess what? Most people are often willing to help people who have great interest in joining their team. So there's no guarantees, but it's an added way to get noticed.
Glassdoor has an amazing sort of arsenal, if you will, of interview questions and the ways that people have been interviewed and what their responses were, et cetera. But at the top companies that everyone wants to apply to, what are some of the questions they can expect for recruiters and hiring managers to ask them? Well, how can people who are tuning in sort of prepare for a big interview?
So across all industries and all companies, there tends to be some common themes and common questions. In fact, this is why we publish on our Glassdoor blog a list called the 50 most common interview questions, and it's actually one of the most popular posts. So some questions that you can anticipate in almost any interview and get you ready for additional questions include, who are you? Why are you applying to this job? Why this company? Why this role? Where do you hope to be in 5 years? Where do you hope to be in 10 years? Tell me about your strengths and your weaknesses. And this is an interesting one, right? If they ask you about your weaknesses, do not say, I'm a perfectionist. They can see right through that one. In that one almost gets asked a lot. Talk about what is truly, be transparent. What is truly a weakness, but then tell them how you are working on that weakness. Because guess what? From CEO to entry level, everyone has weaknesses. They also have strengths, hopefully. But it's okay to acknowledge that.
Is it important for people to sort of rehearse and practice their answers to interview questions? Like, what's the process for preparing for an interview?
Yes, without a doubt, yes. If you're going in and it's a real cool job and at a cool company that you really want, you ought to rehearse. In fact, if you don't rehearse, I might be scared for you because there's a lot of good candidates these days. Is the truth who can stand out? So take those common interview questions and ask them with a loved one or a friend and literally do it just back and forth. They ask the question, you give an answer. Pause every now and then and get feedback. Did you, one, truly answer the question, and two, advance the conversation into the skills that the hiring manager is looking for? Are you solving their problem? Are you solving a challenge that they have? Make it about them and how you are there to help the team, really.
Wonderful. So let's just assume that Joe, the job seeker, gets the interview and now he's been presented with an offer. Like, this is like the best thing ever. But Andrew, one of the biggest things about sort of the job search process is salary negotiation. Right. Oftentimes it's very enticing or it's tempting to just accept the offer. You need a job, you want that job, you feel like it's competitive, so you say, yes, please give me the job and I'll take whatever you got. But
that would be a mistake.
That would be kind of a mistake. But approaching the salary conversation can be tricky. It can be nerve-wracking. How should someone do that, and why should they do some research?
My opinion is everyone should negotiate. Even though it seems uncomfortable, you should always have a conversation about pay. And the reason why is because pay isn't always just about you personally. It's about a market based on supply and demand for the position. You should feel safe talking about pay because it's really about the employer recognizing the value of the position they're hiring for, and you just having an objective conversation about what the market is willing to bear for this role. It's not necessarily about your history or anything about you. I think many people are afraid they're going to offend employers, that employers will feel like they are asking too much. So the one piece of advice I would give anyone who negotiates is ground it in facts, whatever data that you have. Don't just come with an opinion about what you think the value of this job is or how much you're worth. Instead, do some research, dig up whatever you can, use the tools on Glassdoor. For example, we have a Know Your Worth tool on Glassdoor, which allows you to put in some information about yourself, information about the company and the job, and it'll give you an estimate for the pay. I think that's a good conversation starting point. So just like if you're searching for a home, you have to do some research on home values and do comps. You should have comps for salary when you go to that negotiation table. And don't start with your lowest number first.
Okay, good. So don't start with your lowest number. Are there some other tips? Because you can walk into the room or you're not even in the room. Say you're just on the phone and they make the offer and you're, sort of stumbling and bumbling. You're not really sure what to say or how to be that confident. What are some of the tips around salary negotiation that you offer, Scott?
Well, one, I agree with Andrew, negotiate. If you do not ask, you will not receive. And also, the biggest fear, we hear this all the time from job seekers, and I really want to change this, is people do not ask for or negotiate pay because they're fearful they're going to lose the opportunity. They're fearful someone's going to drop that phone and go right to the next candidate. Most often, that's not the case. In fact, I'll be honest, I've never seen that to be the case. Okay. So employers expect you to negotiate, and remember, pay is often one factor of your total compensation equation, even depending on the job or level. It doesn't always mean stock options. It doesn't always mean bonuses. It can mean reimbursements for travel. It can mean reimbursements for food. It can be an added week off. All of these things have monetary values. So basically, know your value, know your worth. Go on Glassdoor, that's why we exist. Look up the specific role in the specific location for that company and get a sense of what fair market value is at that time. Now, let's do this. Okay, we're on the phone. Okay,
yeah.
And you offered me a job. Thank you so much. I'm considering. Just kidding. I
would love
hard
to
work
get
for you. But and you kind of give me a number. Let's say you give me $60,000 for X job. I could say, thank you so much. That sounds wonderful. Based on my research, what I've discovered for this market right now, for this job title, it looks like about 65 to 70 is what the market is paying. Would you be willing to go up for me?
Absolutely. Let me talk to my team and look back at that. You are a valuable candidate, and I feel like you are worth 65 to 70. So let me talk to my team. Are there any other things that you'd like us to consider?
Yeah, well, and that's how it goes. So often one single person likely cannot say yes or no in a second. So it's very often they will go back to the team, and guess what? If they want you, because you've done such a good job showing them your skill set, they're going to ask and push for that because they want quality candidates.
I also understand that there are ways to negotiate sort of other things, whether it's vacation or start date or benefits, et cetera. Is that the case these days?
So it is, yeah. Benefits can be a piece of your total compensation package again. So if you ask for another week off, remember that's 40 hours you're potentially out of the office, so there is a monetary value there. That's kind of nice. Also, while I want everyone to earn more money and earn what they're worth, if it doesn't quite happen at the level you want, this is where you go to plan B. And that includes asking for benefits. Are there any travel reimbursements? I go across this big bridge every day. I got to drive an hour to and from. Would you be willing to reimburse me? They might go yes or no, or they might say we have a shuttle, or they might say there's a ride share, so they can work with that. You could have other maybe benefit, time off or sick leave options or whatever you need. Ask. Again, if you don't ask, you won't get. So have A with the pay and B with some benefits potentially.
And I would say one of the most common benefits people negotiate is flexible work, ability to work from home, and it's becoming more and more common. Just people trying to deal with their commutes, and so that's an easy thing for an employer to just let someone work from home.
Rising trend.
Wow.
So that is a very common request and one that's often accommodated.
Yeah.
Wow. So an employer or hiring manager wouldn't be offended if you said, hey, I wanted to see whether or not I can work from home on Fridays or whether I could telecommute on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
That wouldn't put anyone off?
No, for the right candidate, I think people are willing to move on things like that. Of course, you can negotiate for some benefits like health insurance. Like that's a plan for the entire employer. You're not going to be able to move there. But for vacation time, for flexible work schedules, for other items like that, absolutely people will move.
And Amy, you actually used a very key word there, offended. So if someone is offended by your question, you may want to look at the team, the department. Hopefully no one is offended by any question about a job because it is a two-way street. Now, you can ask, and if they check and your request cannot be met, that's another story. But if someone's offended, that could be a red flag.
Good to know. So we've touched on sort of several topics around the job search, and you've given great insight. But what is your number one tip? We're going to do a little rapid fire here. Okay. Your number one tip for each of these key elements of the job search. All right, are you ready?
We're ready.
You're
ready.
Pumped. Okay. Number one tip for how to prepare for your job search. Scott.
Do your research. Look what others are saying.
Okay. Andrew.
It's like a home search. Get your references ready and your resume ready so when the right offer comes open, you can just take it.
How do you evaluate if a job is a good fit?
Know what matters to you and look at their mission and the job description. If the two align, go for it. If not, move on.
Think about the product or service that the company is offering. If you can't quit it, if you love it, that's going to be a great place to work for you.
How do you evaluate a job description? They all seem the same, but how do you read between those lines?
Again, look for what matters to you, the job duties, but also the vision, the values of the company, and the pay. If it's the perfect storm and it looks pretty good on all facets, go for it. If there's a major red flag, move on. There are too many jobs.
My favorite way to evaluate job descriptions,
Okay.
take the description and turn it into your cover letter. If you can't write
Wow.
a story where you're the main character that weaves together all the top things in the job description, that's probably not the right role for you.
Okay, that is genius. I've never thought of it
Try
that
it
way,
really works.
but it's actually pretty genius.
Tell
Okay,
a story, he says. All right.
your number one tip for building a top-notch resume.
Okay, professional summary, highlight your skills, experience, no more than 1 to 2 pages.
Even a Nobel Prize winner should have a one-page resume. If you have more to share, put it on your personal website and put the link to the website on your resume.
Smart, smart. How do you prepare for an interview? Your number one tip.
Practice the questions out loud with a human.
Okay.
Always be ready to give 3 things that you will do with this role if you're hired. If you can't do that, you're not ready to go.
Man, Dr.
Great
Chamberlain, you're hitting.
right.
All right, and lastly, your number one tip for how to follow up and seal the deal.
Ooh, good one. You go first.
I think a polite, short letter to everyone you met, not just the hiring manager, everyone you met, goes a long way. If you leave that out, you definitely will stand out for the worse.
An email that day, a few hours later. Rapid response, people like that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. That was a lot of great information. I love the don't spray and pray. You know, Dr. Chamberlain, your details on sort of the job market as well as using the job description to funnel into your cover letter were excellent. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and good luck to everyone out there.
All right. Awesome. Now, let's take a look at the other side of the job search and hiring process. We're going to introduce 3 top recruiters who are going to give you the skinny on exactly what they're looking for at their respective companies. We're going to get insight as to what they're looking for, what roles they're hiring for. We can't wait. So joining me now is Liz Wamai, Recruiting Director at Facebook, Ashley Kaur, Senior Manager of Tech Recruiting and Infrastructure Engineering at Salesforce, and Claire Arnold, Leadership Recruiter at Kaiser Permanente. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
So let's kick things off, sort of giving our live stream watchers, viewers, sort of a look into the company culture at each of your companies. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like to work at Kaiser, Claire.
Well, you know, Kaiser Permanente, we're a really large organization, and you think healthcare industry, but there are really a lot of other aspects and facets to working in the healthcare industry. I think it was mentioned earlier that we have opportunities in finance and marketing and sales, and really working at Kaiser Permanente, there are a lot of opportunities that potential candidates can get into and explore and really develop their career within Kaiser Permanente.
Wonderful. Liz, Facebook is on everyone's tongue these days. What makes it unique to work at Facebook?
First, thank you for having us here.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure to come in. What makes it a pleasure to work at Facebook? One, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but the people. I think a lot of the times it's the people that you work with, and how are the people that you're working with committed to the mission, to the values that are about Facebook. And one thing that I will say is the people that work at Facebook tend to be very committed to the mission, always continually learning and looking to have an impact. The other thing that resonated with me is around bringing your authentic self to work. Facebook is a sort of place where you have places where you bring your professional self from Monday to Friday and then your personal self over the weekend. And I will say about Facebook is about your authentic self, who you are, how do you best work. And it's all personal when you think about it. The other thing is around benefits. The panel before talked about benefits and thinking about benefits. And for Facebook is we look at benefits about the different stages in your life. And how can Facebook aspire to meet you where you are, however you define your family, however you define what stage you are in life, is one of the benefits and the differentiating factors about Facebook. And then finally is around the strengths-based culture. We are an environment that looks at what are your strengths, what are your skills, where do you most enjoy playing at. 70-80% of your time is about the skills that most play to your strengths. So what differentiates that is about being a strengths-based culture. That's about you spending most of your times on the things that you're great at, the things that you enjoy, and that you're going to do really well.
Okay. Now, Ashley, Salesforce is like at the core of Salesforce is Ohana. But for those of us and folks who are tuning in, can you describe what that word means and what it means to the culture of Salesforce?
Absolutely. So Mark Benioff, when he chose to start Salesforce, or actually before he chose to start Salesforce, he took a trip to Hawaii where he actually took a sabbatical, and he fell in love with the culture and he fell in love with the values around Ohana. And for those of you that don't know, Ohana is Hawaiian for family. And basically, he decided when he started Salesforce to bake that into our culture from day one. And if you look at our visions and values statement to this day, he started the company in 1999. Now here in 2018, Ohana is actually our number one value, and our culture is extremely important to us. But beyond sort of the corporate jargon, it really extends beyond just the members, the employees of Salesforce. It extends into our community with our volunteer hours. It extends to our customers, just with the community that they feel around our products and around being able to speak to our products and use our products. But for me personally, just to get super real with you guys, I've been at Salesforce for 5 years. And I, have been through an engagement, a marriage, all these happy times. Salesforce was there to lift me up. But also, sadly, more recently, I've been through a divorce as well. And Salesforce was there, and I was able to bring my whole self to work during the entire time. Even being in leadership, and I had the support of my managers and my team, and it has been just remarkable to kind of go through this evolution of highs and lows with a company that actually cares and actually lets me be me at work every day, kind of going through, these major life changes. So for that, that's my personal experience, and for that, I'm so grateful.
I completely relate to that. Being at Glassdoor has felt like family and has felt just wonderful going just through the different stages of life. Claire, my mom has been a Kaiser physician for 35 years in Southern California. She actually went on her interview for her residency and everything at Kaiser almost a month after I was born. So it's been with us. I've been a Kaiser baby my whole life. So how does sort of company culture at Kaiser differentiate between sort of like the corporate side and hospital? Is there a difference? Is it all one? What's the culture like?
Well, yes, because Kaiser Permanente is such a large organization, you are going to see some subtle differences or nuances between the different locations and medical centers. But overall, universally, we have a general culture where Kaiser is one that's inclusive and collaborative, and we support our employees in having a voice and speaking out. And so I think that there is a great deal of trust and mutual respect between the staff and the management. And with that builds a lot of collaboration. The staff feel that they have a voice and they can speak out and make a difference and an impact in the work that they do and how that impacts the healthcare in the U.S. Wow. And so overall, there might be some small differences here or there, but generally the environment and culture that you'll see at any Kaiser facility is one of inclusiveness and collaboration.
Liz, Facebook has been in the news recently, to say it lightly. But when you and when Facebook as a company is sort of facing sort of external pressures, like many other companies have, how does that impact sort of workplace culture? How does that affect sort of what is it like to work there? Does it affect it? Does it make you all stronger and sort of bond together? What's it been like over the past couple months?
You and my mom want to know. I will say, this is not the first challenge that we're facing, and I expect it's not going to be the last that we're facing. Just given our position in the world, I expect that this is going to be going on, given how many people that we impact, it's going to go on. So My mom has asked me about that. What I would say is one of our core values, we have 5 core values, and one of our core values is around focusing on impact. And one of the ways that we make impact is working on some of the most important problems and key problems in the world. And so when we think about who we're hiring, when we think about who we're bringing on board, we focus a lot about people who are builders, people who are problem solvers, people who want to have an impact. And as a recruiter, to me, the way that manifests itself a lot of the times is during times like this. Is that I do think it's a very opportune moment to think about people who are motivated by this, they want to be a part of it. When you talk to them about, here, this is some of what we're working on, is there are people who are driven by that and want to be a part about the mission of building community and bringing people, the world closer together. And so there are people who are motivated by that. And then there are some who are not. And back to what the panel said before, is that does help you sift through who is committed to what we're about in terms of having an impact. When I think about at Facebook right now is because we focused on problem solvers and builders, it has had a very galvanizing impact and bringing people together, rallying around leadership. And people wanted to help solve problems, and solve some of the problems that we've been talking about. One of, I think 2018, Mark's challenge this year is to fix Facebook. And to fix some of the problems that I've been talking about over the last couple of months. I'm sure a lot of people watched him at the congressional hearings. And so one of the things we've done is then focusing on people and hiring people and recruiting people. And I can say as a recruiter, it does help me differentiate who is really about, I want to be involved, I want to be a part of solving the problems, and who does not. So it has had, I think, about rallying people around leadership, rallying people about the problems and what we want to fix in the world, and understanding what our position is in the world, I think has been very galvanizing, especially for me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That transitions us perfectly into, I think, what most of the live stream viewers are wondering, sort of, what are the roles that you're hiring for? What are you looking for? Can you give us a sampling of the roles that you're hiring for? Each of you all, I think, are kind of hiring like thousands of roles through Glassdoor. But are there particular roles that stand out to you, Ashley, that you're hiring for right now at Salesforce?
Absolutely. So we're an enterprise software company. So for those of you that maybe aren't super familiar, that basically means that we're selling software to other businesses. A lot of our roles obviously are technical. My team hires for distributed systems engineers and infrastructure. So, you know, for any distributed systems engineers, please shoot me an email. But you know, we also hire for a multitude of things. And I've been at Salesforce a long time, and I've recruited for everything from, you know, somebody that works in our mail room, which is actually how I got referred into Salesforce, all the way up to like Mark Benioff's personal security. I mean, we have such a wide variety of roles. Executive assistants, also customer support engineers. I mean, the list goes on and on. I would be probably in big trouble if I didn't mention we are doing a big sales hiring push. We have sales hubs all over the world. So we hire people from, you know, entry-level sales all the way up to account executives and regional vice presidents. So, you know, we're hiring for so many things. I just encourage you, if you're interested at all in learning more about Salesforce, just to go to our careers website, salesforce.com/careers.
Awesome. Claire, are there any particular roles that Kaiser is really looking to fill right now?
Well, similar to what Ashley said, we have a plethora of positions and a variety of careers that we're offering. So a majority of our positions are patient-facing and patient-focused positions. So about 70% of the positions we fill are patient care-centered. But we do also have opportunities in IT and quality. And we're always looking for leaders, both clinical and non-clinical leaders, to support our staff and lead our medical office buildings and hospitals.
Wow. Yes. And I will quickly add that we are recruiting at Facebook as well, similar to my fellow panelists, is we are looking for roles across technical, non-technical. So of course, software engineering, product engineers, we're looking for product designers, product managers, as well as, because I think there's a tendency, as a panel before said, for people to just think about technology and technical roles, but marketing and sales roles, HR, recruiting. We have roles within recruiting. And so if you are interested, again, same thing, go to our careers website. Most of our positions are posted there. We're not just in the Bay Area. We are looking in different markets, locations as well around the US and globally. So just don't limit yourself to technical roles. We have roles across the gamut.
Okay. So for each of your companies, you are each best places to work according to Glassdoor. You get thousands of applications. Folks really want to work at your companies. So say, for example, we've got, Alicia. She's out there in the world and she's applied. How can she sort of distinguish herself amongst the pack of 1,000 applicants or 200 applicants? What are you really looking for, and how can folks really stand out?
Well, I think Scott and Dr. Chamberlain really touched on that earlier on, and including in your resume achievements that you've accomplished and highlight any projects or programs that you've implemented. And I think that makes someone stand out. Definitely read the job description and read the qualifications for the job, and make sure if you have those qualifications and those skill sets that you highlight that in your resume. Obviously, I think that will definitely get your resume that second look, but highlighting those achievements and putting on their quantitative results of your achievements will definitely get you that call from a recruiter.
A huge source of hiring, I'm sure, at Kaiser, Facebook, as well as Salesforce is referrals. And so I actually counsel veterans that are transitioning from the military career into civilian life, and a huge part of my advice for them is, if you're really interested in a company or you're really interested in a specific job, look at that company, look at LinkedIn, try to find people who maybe you either know or maybe have a similar background to you, like you both went to the same undergrad or you both were in the Navy. Try to network with them and get that referral into that company. Most of the jobs I've had in my adult life have been through referrals, and I just feel that gives you that little bit of an extra edge because you have someone in that company that has your back. And even if you don't know them or even talked to them in a long time, you would be shocked at how proud people are to work where they work and how excited they are at the thought of maybe helping you come in. Doesn't hurt that a lot of companies also have referral bonuses. They have a little extra incentive. But referrals are a huge, huge way. So definitely leverage your network, do your research on Glassdoor, see who you know, learn as much about the company as you can, but also see who you know within the company and try to get in that way.
Now, how much does it matter, and does it matter, whether someone applies for a job within the first 24 or 48 hours that it was posted? Does that really matter? Can you apply to a job that's been posted for 13 days or 26 days? Or are you at the bottom of the stack? Where does that rank for you all in your recruiting teams?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. And move fast is one of our core values. It's one of our 5 core values. So of course you want somebody who's moving fast and on the go and applied for it. But I do like what my other panelists have said, is that you also want to make sure that you're connecting the dots between what the job requirements are and what the responsibilities are that are on the job description to what your skills are, and drawing those connections and connecting those dots. Because sometimes what we'll find is people will quickly apply for a role or tend to do this whole spray thing and just apply to as many roles as possible. So first is just think strong and hard about what are your skills, what experiences have you had, but more importantly, what are your skills and how do those align with the role that you're applying for. We do tend to post jobs for some time, but when it gets to a point where there's too many applications or you have a lot of applications, you want to make sure that you have some time to look through each of those applications before responding. But yes, it does. It's always good when somebody's moving fast, that they respond quickly. But it doesn't mean that if you wait 2-3 days that you have a missed opportunity. So I usually say focus on connect the dots between your background, your resume, what you have, and the role that you're applying for.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that it's really important for people to be informed candidates about your respective companies before applying. So it's almost like, as opposed to just seeing the job posting and then applying in a minute, it's almost like you want well-researched, engaged candidates who've looked at your profiles before, who've engaged with you, who know a bit about what your company has to offer, and then when they see the role, really staying on top of it to apply. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, as far as, when I'm thinking about my ideal job applicant, recruiters are busy. I know everybody's busy, but recruiters, we are managing candidates, we're managing hiring managers, we're managing our own managers, we're managing our lives outside of work. And so anything that people can do to take the guesswork out of, does this person match the job? Amazing. Look at the job description, and then if you really want that job, rewrite your resume and tweak your bullet points that it aligns exactly with what the job description is asking for. And most job descriptions will have things like the company's core values or, the must-haves. And make sure you don't have to apply to a job where you have 100% of the must-haves, but make sure that you're connecting the dots as much as you humanly can in your resume for that job before you apply. And then that way, as a recruiter, if I'm scanning through your resume, I'm like, okay, this sounds familiar. This sounds a lot like what the hiring manager was talking to me about in that intake meeting, where I learned about all of the qualifications that they needed for this role. So anything that people can do to take that guesswork out is going to help us immensely. If we have to connect the dots, we might not see something. And I made a transition out of veterinary medicine into recruiting, and trying to connect the dots between those two worlds was insane. But I had a friend who was in sales that sat down with me and was like, well, you kind of did some client management there. So you can actually rewrite this bullet point to say you worked with clients, on invoices in excess of $10,000. Like, put that in there. And so he helped me sort of connect those dots. And if anybody out there is listening, like, if I can make that jump, you can connect the dots between your skill set and the job that you want.
Those are those transferable skills, and telling that narrative that you were kind of talking about, telling that narrative in your resume and in your cover letter. So that's impressive. Job seekers hate the black hole, right? We click apply, and then we don't hear back.
Right.
But can you offer us some insight from your perspective? What's happening on the other side of things? What's happening when an application is maybe in the black hole, or at least like sitting in the applicant tracking system? What are you all doing on the other side of the wall, if you will, when you're receiving tons of applications? What's that process like?
It can be difficult to sort through the high number of submissions of interest that we get, and we get hundreds, if not thousands, a day of submissions of interest for our positions. So as much as we'd like to engage with each candidate, it can be hard, and it's not an automated system. A lot of it is still manual, where recruiters really have to review the resumes and determine whether or not it's a candidate that you have to move forward with. And so I think, again, with what everyone else was saying about spraying and praying, try not to do that. Really focus your search on what you're interested in and what your skill sets are a best match for. That way you'll have a greater chance of being called back by a recruiter.
Yeah. And I completely agree, I think. And sometimes I try to, when you speak to people and they say, hey, I've applied, I haven't heard back, is just helping to help them understand the number of applications that we receive on a daily basis, which is why the points that we've made about making sure that your resume is closely aligned to the role that you're applying for. Because what a recruiter will do, as Scott and Dr. Chamberlain has said, is you'll spend about 6-7 seconds looking through a resume. And usually what you're looking to do is to connect those dots. Is I know this role is looking for this, is looking for this skill set. Does this person have it? Whether it's the summary that they have, whether it's the skills that they have, you're trying to do that really fast. And hopefully the system and the tools that we have will help us get to those candidates a lot faster. The other thing I would say is for high volume areas, at least at Facebook, what we've tried to do is to resource those areas enough so that we have enough people looking at the applications. And by the way, you might not be right for this role, but we really encourage our recruiters and our sources to be able to say, oh, they're not right for my role, but I'll flip them over to this other team or this other pipeline where I think there'll be a match. And a lot of the times is months, weeks, years later, somebody will be looking back and saying, oh wait, that person has very fascinating background, we're looking for that skill set. So whereas you might not get an answer immediately, our recruiters, once you've been in touch with a recruiter, you should expect somebody to close the loop. Whether you're advancing in the process or not, you should expect somebody to close the loop because we aim for a good candidate experience. But I often say, please don't spray everybody with your resume. Find 2 to 3 roles that you feel you are best positioned and that your resume is best equipped to be able to apply for those roles, and then take it from there. It's the whole mass application that is a bit of a problem. Yeah.
So Scott and Andrew sort of talked a little bit about sort of following up on an application. And I'm sure you all have tried and true stories of people following up. Any hilarious moments of people following up on a job search or in an application, or anything that sort of stands out as a way that someone either applied for a job and followed up with you, either a taboo or something that was really great that paid off?
I've got a funny story.
Okay, come on. Bring it, Ashley.
So this was probably like 5 years ago, and we had transitioned from paper resumes into digital. So it was definitely during that era. But I had a candidate that was super interested in a role. She had already applied. We were figuring out sort of some details about the role, and within a day, she had mailed me a perfumed copy of her resume to Salesforce, addressed to me, and I had never received paper and mail at Salesforce. So I was like, this is so weird. And so I go, and it was literally like Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. That's amazing. With a headshot. And I was like, this is different. It definitely made her stand out in my mind. She ended up not being the right match for the role. It was for an executive assistant role, so that you can have to have the right chemistry with that particular person. But to this day, I still actually every once in a while will engage with her through LinkedIn or some other form of social media, and we just have kind of kept tabs on each other. So
wow, talk about putting your best foot forward. Go, sister. You're going to stand out from the crowd. I remember when I was looking to get an internship, and I applied to the Source magazine back in the day, and I had submitted my application, and again, it was a paper resume, but I had found sort of like this really beautiful turquoise paper to put it on in like a turquoise envelope, and sure enough, I got the internship, probably not because of the turquoise, but she did say it stood out from the stack, and yes, that was like 20 years ago, no, don't judge me, but it's just to say that like you go the extra mile for the job that you really want, and I think in today's job market, it's really about that cover letter. Yes. And really using that as the distinguishing space and the resume as that distinguishing space. Would you agree?
Definitely. Yeah. I do agree. And especially what Dr. Chamberlain and Scott had said, it's really your time to exemplify the achievements that you've accomplished, and I especially agree with the communication and showing your written communication skills, because a lot of that is lacking, right, in today's in today's world. And so I think the ability to write a good, articulate cover letter was definitely helpful to your application.
And I do emphasize substance over style. You could perfume it. And you can have it on turquoise.
Right, but if it's not meaty, right, if it doesn't have the right bullet points.
Exactly, what's the substance?
And again, it's an opportunity to sell yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a resume, it's hard for people, I think, sometimes to sell themselves. And I think sometimes when they get in their resume mode, they look at their old job descriptions and they're like, I did this, this, and this. And, that's great, but like, how does that relate to the job that you want? And so the cover letter, again, is your sales pitch. It's your elevator pitch. You've got that 30 seconds in the door with the recruiter. Pitch it.
Absolutely. Now, for each of your companies, what are some of the common interview questions that they can expect from either yourself or the hiring managers that you work with? What are some of those really tough, like juggernauts that you're asking candidates who come through your doors?
Well, I don't think we really have tough questions. I feel, of course, we're very patient-focused and patient-centered and want to make sure that we're providing exceptional patient care. So definitely we're going to ask questions that focus on customer service and service orientation. A lot of our questions are behavioral-based questions because we want to hear examples of the work that you've done. We want to hear, your ability to work in a large setting or work in a large, complex organization because we are ourselves a large, complex organization. So we want to see your ability to thrive in that type of environment. And so definitely behavioral-based questions that are going to assess those skills are the types of questions we ask.
Okay. Yeah, and you're increasingly finding you would find the gotcha questions, like
right, the tricky ones, right,
where you can see them fumbling and you see them trying to say the gotcha questions really don't get to what is the person's competency, what can they do, and so leaning towards more structured interviews that you ask multiple candidates will sort of yield unbiased responses or assessments. Is that when you're asking the same questions to all the candidates for the same role, you're going to get to a better result because then you're assessing them based on the questions that you asked.
Okay.
But I do find questions that align when asking questions is, what do you do on your best day at work? And to me, that speaks to what are their strengths, what do they like to do, what are their skills, or when is it that you have lost track of time in the best possible way. It means that you've been doing something that you really enjoy, and you're like, oh wait,
the day's flown by, right?
The day's flown by. So those are the times when you really get to what motivates somebody. When does somebody really get engaged or get really involved that they don't realize what the time is? Or a question about how does your team contribute to Facebook's mission and values. And to me, that is about understanding how the different parts of Facebook feed the mission or help the mission and the values that we are about. But usually trying to get to what motivates somebody by asking, what has been your best day at work and what were you doing when you were doing that? Yeah.
I think also people sometimes tend to maybe not prepare as much for a recruiter screen, and to be honest, that can be a pretty tricky place.
Yeah.
And something that I always tell my friends when they're interviewing, recruiters really want to know, like, why are you looking at this new job? Why are you looking to leave your old company? Are you running towards something? Are you running from something? And I'm sure you two know as much as I do, sometimes you ask that question and people really flail, and sometimes they go into this negative spiral about how the company's not doing well, or their manager, or something, this happened, and this this org change happened, and then I'm like, oh, an org change happened there. Interesting. Maybe I should start calling those engineers, but
Poacher.
Yeah. Just kidding. No, but really. Okay, so, I think figuring out, like, what are you doing? What's motivating the shift in your life? Your job is obviously where you spend the majority of your time. So, what's causing that shift? And so that's a big one. I think also, as you mentioned, it's really what motivates you. And recruiters have this whole always be closing sort of mentality, like in sales, where I want to know from the get-go, if I get to the finish line with you, what is it going to take to close you? And so, where do you sit at in the commute? And I feel like a lot of times people, might be, like if I'm talking to a candidate in San Jose that's interviewing for a San Francisco position, in the beginning they're gonna be like, oh yeah, 2-hour commute, no problem. And then we get to the offer stage and all of a sudden that commute is a really big problem. So I think to an extent, being truthful with yourself as well as the recruiter in the beginning, so that way we can have those conversations to really figure out, like, what works for you. We can talk to the hiring manager about, different maybe like remote setups or things like that. So, I think just being prepared to kind of answer those questions to the recruiter truthfully, but also kind of have an idea of, what's really motivating this big change in your life before you go into that recruiter call, because I can tell if someone's lying to me, and I'm sure you two can as well from a mile away.
So when you're in interviews and you all have been hiring managers yourself, what's the best question, or what's something that really stands out to you that a candidate has asked? A question, because yes, you all are supposed to ask the questions, but you hope that candidates ask questions back, as they should. Has there been a memorable question that someone has asked, or a very memorable exchange that you've had with a candidate? Can you share? Liz, you look like you have something like really good on your mind. I love it.
I do. I really do like when you get different questions, and it's inspiring questions or insightful questions, which means they've been doing their homework, and not just the surface homework that every one of us can do, but they've gone deep and a little bit more nuanced with their questions. So when people ask questions about, hey, Facebook has been in the news the last 12 months, tell me a little bit about what's going on, and allowing me to give my perspective on things. When people ask the question I said earlier about how does your team, or in recruiting, I'm on the business side of things, is how is your team contributing to Facebook's mission and values? Or when somebody's asking is, where do you think I can have, what's your biggest problem? And where do you think I can have the most impact? Like that kind of stuff that is not your, so what is your?
Can you tell me about your day-to-day? And you're like, my day-to-day is not yours.
When they've taken time to do the research on this, the recruiter, they've taken time to read about what's going on Facebook, what we're about, our product. That is a whole other conversation gets started. And it also exposes you to who the person is or who the individual is. So I think the insightful, thought out, well-researched questions that show that the person has really gone above and beyond and differentiates themselves,
Claire, has there been a question or an exchange with a candidate that has really stuck out to you?
Well, a candidate one time asked me at the end of our call how long I'd been with Kaiser and what kept me there. And I thought that was a really great question. I think it's important for prospective candidates to ask current employees why they like working at an organization and what keeps them there, because hopefully that's in line with what you're looking for in an organization.
Ashley, anything stand out to you?
Well, Salesforce, as I mentioned, a big value is the Ohana and volunteering and that piece of it. And so I've had candidates come in to me as a hiring manager, and they've researched Salesforce, they've looked on the website, and they've asked me, what have you done to volunteer? And so that way I can share a little bit of my story, but it also shows that they've done the research. And I know that Scott mentioned research earlier in the quickfire, and I think that that's such a huge, huge proponent of, or portion of job, of interviewing, job searching.
It is.
Wonderful. Okay, so we are counting down. We've got a few more minutes left. So I'm gonna shoot you over some rapid fire questions. Okay. So you're gonna spit it back. So we'll go down the line, and feel free to jump off when you feel like it. So what is the best interview answer that you've ever heard?
Oh, I've asked somebody, tell me something about you that surprises me. I grew up in a firehouse, so not much does. What? And the candidate said basically that he was in the Super Bowl halftime show with Madonna, and I was like, what? No. And he ended up getting the job, so it's all good.
Cool. That's a pretty cool one. Best interview answer that you ever heard?
Well, mine was more of a situation than an answer. I was screening a candidate over the phone, and I hear his kids run in the room screaming, "The dog pooped in the other room!" And he managed to calm the kids down. He cleaned up the mess, and he was still answering my question.
Wow.
And he did it very well, too. He was very calm throughout the whole time.
Way to show off his multitasking skills.
I felt like he really showed his multitasking and ability to stay calm under pressure. So it was great.
Oh, I can't top that.
That's good.
All right, for each of you, cover letter, is it a do or a don't?
It
depends.
I do.
Oh.
To me, I think it depends.
Okay.
Because I think there are some roles that are really high volume where your resume speaks for itself and your resume will tell your story. And then there are other roles where I think the cover letter, as the panel before had said, helps to tell your story if people can't really quite differentiate you from from your resume. So I think it really it depends on the roles that you're applying for.
Okay.
Resume in my mind is tantamount, but I feel like the cover letter, it's not going to hurt you as long as you don't have any grammatical errors and you are using it to sell yourself and you're not just listing off a laundry list of the things that you've done in your life.
Absolutely. So what is your best piece of career advice that you adhere to personally?
Don't take it personally. I remember one of my former bosses said to me, you take it too personally. Like you need to stand back from the feedback, look at the feedback, be objective about it, so don't take it personally. So I always take that with me, is don't take it personally, think it through, be objective and not subjective about it, and then take it from there. So for me, it's don't take it personally.
Okay.
I take that all the time.
That's great. I'm going to use that.
She's like, got it, check. Ashley, do you have any personal career advice that you hold on to?
I do, and this one is kind of a funny sounding one, but bear with me. So I got this actually from my VP of tech recruiting, and it's kind of an old fashioned saying, so it's a little outdated, don't judge me, but if you are going to come to me and tell me that there's a gorilla in my office, you better come with a banana or a gun, which just means, and it sounds harsh, but it means come to me with a solution, or at least have thought about some possible solutions. As a manager, I'm so happy to work through that with you, but you've got to at least give me something to work with, so. Wow. That's a big one.
That was some amazing tips and insight. I feel like we could keep going for hours and hours digging deep on all of your companies and sort of recruiting practices, but I wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it so much. To all of you watching, a big, big thank you. We hope that you have more information now than you had before on how to find a job in a company that fits your life. Don't forget that Glassdoor is the perfect place to search and apply to jobs. We've got millions of the latest job postings, plus reviews and salary information. So thank you so much. With that, happy job hunting, and we'll see you on Glassdoor. Have a good evening.